Watching News 24 Live, welcome to our Monday morning sports chat. I'm joined in studio by Sport24 editor Garen Lamley and chief writer Rob Howing to catch up with some of the big sporting stories making headlines. Gents, thanks very much. Thanks very much for coming in. I trust you had a good weekend. A lot of conjecture and speculation around the next Springbok coach, whether Hanneke Meyer is going to stick around. Garen, initially there were reports that he was going to be in office for another 4 years, then only a year. Now, maybe not at all.
Yeah.
What's the latest?
It seems, the latest from this weekend seems like he might not be sticking around at all. The Executive Council of SARU are meeting on December the 11th, expecting a result or the announcement on the following day. So not long to go until we find out for sure. As you said, at some point, not so long ago, it looked like he was staying for full 4 years until the next Rugby World Cup in Japan 2019. Then it was, no, maybe it'll be only a year. Now it looks like not at all. Obviously, Alistair Coetzee's name's sort of been thrown around as his potential replacement. I even heard today, Johan Ackerman, perhaps, the Lions might not stand in his way. Apparently, it's been confirmed that Alistair Coetzee's Japanese club, where he currently coaches, won't stand in the way. It's probably because it's written into his contract that if an international job does open up, he can out.
Billy Jones can do it. So,
no, absolutely. Yeah, we've learned a lot, I think, in the last few weeks that contracts mean very, very little, and there's always an escape clause. So it looks like Alistair Coetzee, former Stormers coach, could well be the next Springbok coach, probably for 4 years, I guess, until the next World Cup.
Is that again, Garen, based on the sort of odds at the betting houses, etc.?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about betting agencies in the last couple of weeks. It seems that they have the inside scoop to everything. Odds start crashing, then they suspend betting completely, and then the next thing you know, that person in question has been confirmed as the next coach. So it seems that they're the ones to follow. Whether Alistair Coetzee, that's obviously the $1 million question. Whether he's a better coach than Hanneke Meyer for the Springboks, remains to be seen. A lot of skeptics will point to Coetzee's record at the Stormers, where the Stormers hardly scored 4 tries in any Super Rugby match. I think, in fact, they went one whole season with topped the South African Conference, but didn't score 4 tries in any match. And that's obviously what a lot of fans have been calling for the Springboks to be more enterprising, score more tries, rather than relying on that sort of grinding, mauling game plan that we sort of implemented in the last couple of years. So, the jury's up. It remains to be seen whether he's actually a step forward for South African rugby. Obviously, he hasn't got the job yet, so we just have to wait and see.
Rob, it looks like obviously Hanneke Meyer does have a lot of support. So the Executive Council obviously make their decision, but it sounds like there's disagreement or discord with the Council of Provinces or the heads of the different provincial unions. Alistair Coetzee wouldn't necessarily, as Garen touched on, shake things up. Is the sort of feeling in rugby circles. And then, of course, other names that have been thrown around are guys like John Plumtree, John Mitchell, who've also been linked to the Stormers post. So lots of speculation and stuff. But how much of this can we actually take to heart?
Well, we're in the silly season anyway, because people are clutching at sort of issues. We're so used to sort of there being, rugby from one Saturday to another for sort of 9 or 10 months of the year. Of course, now that's all come to a sort of grinding halt in South Africa. So, of course, speculation mounts on all sorts of off-season issues. And obviously, the Springbok coach is obviously a fairly paramount issue anyway. I'm a little bit intrigued. You mentioned the name of John Mitchell, of course. Interesting to me that the Stormers haven't yet come to terms with him. You'd think they'd want to act quite fast after the sort of fiasco, which was not strictly of their own making, over Eddie Jones, and that they would want to actually almost sort of save some face by getting their new guy in as soon as possible. John Mitchell, of course, the fact that he's sort of has been mentioned in both the Stormers and Springbok context is an interesting one, because you wonder if is there a little bit of jockeying going on between, bizarrely, the national body and one of their major franchises over a sort of, maybe there's a little bit of a sort of tug of war, who knows. John Mitchell has been keeping pretty mum over the whole thing, which tells you there must be some sort of delicacy involved. John Plumtree, perhaps a little bit less of a favourite, given that he apparently is pretty settled again back in New Zealand and doesn't want to sort of uproot his family again at this stage. Although, of course, things can change depending on the sort of terms you might be able to wangle with any prospective new employer. So you can't cut him out of the picture completely, especially given his experience of the South African landscape. And with all this talk about is South Africa ready for a foreign coach? Well, when would we ever be ready? And besides, if you take a Mitchell or a Plumtree, you're basically killing two birds with one stone, because they've got such intimate knowledge of the South African domestic scene, even though they are New Zealand born, that it's almost like appointing domestic coaches. So they almost they fill that gap potentially quite nicely. But I still think Alistair Coetzee, he's been primed for some time, you know, and even when he went to Japan,
been an assistant coach of the Boks in the past.
He has, and even when he left, there were lots of stories, pointedly making reference to the fact that he'd gone to Japan, but that he could get out whenever the need arose, as Garen said, for him to come back to take the national post. And look, he does bring many attributes. I know there's a lot of talk about the sort of the fairly sterile rugby that the Stormers played, but he did make them a hard team to beat. He's a good planner, and if he got the right team,
it also depends, on his assistant staff.
Very much so, very much so. I think if there was some insistence that he have some really dynamic characters working with him to sort of bolster the Springbok attack, then things could work out for the better. He's also very good at bringing through young players. He has a lot of confidence in young players, and so he had a reputation at the Stormers for bringing through sort of under 21 players, for instance, fairly smartly, and often a lot of them sort of they didn't sink, they swam. It's from that point of view, especially with the Boks in transition, a few old faces bowing out, he does bring certain positives to the party, make no mistake.